Welcome back, guys, to Fear Begins, a step towards the horror. In today's episode, I'm going to narrate 7 true Appalachian Mountains disturbing and creepy stories. So make sure to hit that like and subscribe button and share this with your friends. Also, let me know from where you're watching and which story you like the most. Thanks. Now let's start. I was 22 when this happened. Young enough to think I was invincible. Old enough to regret being wrong about it. That summer, my best friend Josh and I decided to drive across the country. We didn't have jobs lined up or much of a plan, just that need to get out, to feel like we were doing something big before adulthood locked the doors behind us. Josh had this ancient Subaru with dents on every panel, but an engine that refused to quit. We stuffed it with clothes, a cooler full of gas station sandwiches, and a half-dead Bluetooth speaker we duct-taped to the dash. We were heading east from Colorado, somewhere near the Tennessee line, when Josh spotted an alternate route on his phone. "This way's better," he said. "It goes through the mountains. Super scenic, adds like 2 hours max." I should have checked the map. Should have asked more questions, but I was tired and it sounded harmless enough, just a longer route through trees. No big deal. The road started okay, quiet, a little winding, but normal. It narrowed the farther we went until the lines in the middle vanished and the trees were pressing in on both sides. The GPS lost signal about 20 minutes in, and we figured we'd just keep going until we hit the next town. Then we saw a sign, old and splintered, leaning slightly off its post. "Lost 8 miles. Josh snorted. "Sounds like a Halloween haunted house." I just nodded, but my stomach did this little flip. It wasn't the name. It was the way the letters were painted, jagged, uneven, like someone wrote it with their non-dominant hand in a rush. Still, we didn't stop, just kept rolling. At exactly 8 miles, the car stalled, not like it ran out of gas. 1 second, we were moving, and the next, nothing. The engine died without a single noise. No warning lights, no sputtering, just silence. Josh swore and cranked the key again and again. The dashboard lit up. The battery was fine, but all we got was that dry, echoing click. We popped the hood. Nothing seemed wrong. No smoke, no leaks, but the engine wouldn't even try. That's when I realized how quiet it was, not peaceful. Dead, like someone hit mute on the whole world. No birds, no bugs, not even wind in the trees. Josh muttered something about trying to walk to town. I agreed, even though part of me already knew we weren't going to find anything. We followed the road with a flashlight, sticking close. For a while, it was just empty woods, but then the animals started showing up. First, a fox lying on the shoulder, mouth open, eyes clouded, no blood, then a raccoon, then a deer, all the same, like they'd just fallen over mid-step, nothing messy. Just wrong. Then Josh stopped. He pointed at the fox. "Same white spot on the ear," he said. "Same spot. That's the same fox." A few minutes later, we saw it again and again, like the road was on a loop, and we were too slow to notice until now. "We're not getting anywhere," Josh said. "This is messed up." I nodded. We turned around, except now the path back didn't feel familiar. The bends were different. The trees leaned differently, and I started noticing carvings, initials, and names we hadn't seen before. One tree had a mitten nailed to it, just a single kid's mitten. Another had a pile of stones underneath, with fresh dirt scattered around. Then we heard it, whispers. At first it sounded like wind in the leaves, but there was a rhythm to it. Not English, not anything I recognized, just low, steady chanting. The kind that gets into your spine before your ears. We didn't even talk about it. We just ran. Branches scratched my arms. The flashlight bounced, then slipped from Josh's hand. He yelled once, just once. It was sharp and sudden, and then nothing. I didn't stop. Eventually, I crashed into a clearing, out of breath, bleeding from somewhere on my face. The car was there, but it wasn't in the same spot. The passenger door was wide open. My bag was gone, and scratched deep into the hood were the words, "You brought him back." I don't remember sitting down, just that the car started on its own. Engine alive, lights on. I gripped the wheel like it was the only thing holding me to the world and hit the gas. I drove for hours without stopping. Didn't care where I ended up. Eventually, I found a sheriff station in a town I don't even remember the name of. I told them everything. They sent out a search team. But they came back empty. No trace of Josh. No record of any place called Lost Hollow. They said people get turned around in those woods all the time. They made it sound normal. It's been a few years now. I don't hike. I don't camp. I don't even drive near mountains. If you're enjoying these stories so far, I have a quick request. If you've ever experienced something similar, I genuinely love to hear about it. Drop it in the comments. And if you have a story idea you'd like me to cover next, feel free to share that too. If you haven't already, a like and subscribe would mean a lot. And also, you can share this with your friends. Love you all. This happened 3 years ago, and I've never talked about it outside my closest circle. But it's real. I was there. I saw everything. It started when my best friend Caleb inherited an old Winnebago from his grandfather. Thing looked like a relic. Rust patches, cracked windows, the whole deal. But it ran well enough. We were both 22, burnt out from college and looking for something that didn't feel like a routine. So we hit the road. The plan, if you could call it that, was to head down through the Appalachians. Caleb said he wanted to see stars without any city lights in the way. I was in, so was our other friend Jonah. We packed food, tossed a speaker in the back, and took off with zero prep. No route, no reservations, just vibes. The first couple days were exactly what we needed. Empty roads, tiny towns, lots of trees. Every time we lost cell signal, it felt like we were leaving something behind. No notifications, no responsibilities, just us in the mountains. On the third night, we pulled off near a trailhead somewhere in western North Carolina. Caleb mentioned the town name once, but none of us remembered it afterward. We parked the camper and cracked a few beers under the stars. That's when Caleb brought up the hodering, locals only, he said, totally off the grid. I dropped a pin before. We lost service, seemed random. But we were bored and curious. Around 9:30 p.m., we piled into the camper again and followed his offline map. The road narrowed quickly. Trees leaned in from both sides. We hadn't seen a house in miles, and there were no street lights, just our headlights cutting through the dark. Jonah had passed out in the back. Caleb drove. I sat up front, eyes locked on the road. And then we almost hit them, two figures standing directly in our lane. Caleb hit the brakes hard. Tires skidded. The camper fishtailed a little. We missed them by inches. It was a woman and a little boy just walking. No flashlight, no shoes on the kid. The woman wore a long shawl that looked heavy, like something you'd wear to a funeral. Neither of them reacted to us. Didn't flinch, just kept walking. Like they didn't even see the camper. What the hell? Caleb muttered, "Was that real?" I looked at him. Did we just almost hit a kid? There was no one around, no nearby houses, nothing but dark trees and a road that didn't seem to end. I pulled out my phone. The GPS was frozen. Just a blue dot sitting in a blank green space. No road names, no landmarks. We kept going, unsettled, but unsure what else to do. Eventually, we reached the spot from Caleb's map. There was a clearing with a dirt lot and a few RVs already parked there. 5 or 6, I think. We thought it would be empty. Instead, it was chaos. People were running around with flashlights. A few were yelling. One woman was sobbing. A child had gone missing. A couple rushed over the second they saw us pull in. The woman was frantic. "Please," she said. "Have you seen a little boy? Blonde, 3 years old, pajamas. He was just with us and now he's gone." Something clicked in my chest. I turned to Caleb. The dash cam. We showed them the footage. When the woman saw it, she broke down completely. "That's Jacob," she whispered. "That's our son." They asked us to take them to the exact spot. Caleb turned the camper around and 3 other cars followed us. Jonah woke up partway through and asked what was going on. We didn't answer. as we retraced our route. I scanned every patch of roadside like my life depended on it. And then we found him curled up near a drainage pipe, crying. Caleb stopped. His parents ran and scooped him up. He was okay, just cold and scared. The police came not long after. They called it an attempted abduction, but no one could explain how someone had gotten into the camp without being seen or how the kid had ended up almost a mile away from where he started. When they asked Jacob what happened, he said a lady took his hand and told him to come for a walk. She said she'd bring him back soon. Then she told him to wait by the road and walked into the woods, told him to stay quiet. We gave the dash cam footage to the cops. 2 weeks later, we got it back. No leads, no suspects. But I still remember her face from that video, the way she smiled. It didn't look right. It wasn't just off. It looked like her face didn't know how to smile. Like someone had told her what a human expression should look like, and she got it wrong. I went back to that road a year later, thought maybe I imagined it. But the turnoff gone. Trees had reclaimed everything. The trailhead was erased. The lot padlocked. The pin Caleb dropped on his offline map, it's not there anymore. No history, no coordinates, like it was never marked at all. But it happened. I know it did. I still have the footage. I'm 32, been hiking since I was a teenager. Grew up just outside of Elkridge, Maryland, where there's enough wilderness to get lost in, but not so much that you really can. My dad took me on weekend hikes when I was a kid, and it just stuck. There's something about being out in the woods. No phones, no engines, no lights, just the crunch of leaves underfoot, your own breathing. I always found peace in it, which is probably why what happened last fall still keeps me up at night. It was a simple idea, me, my cousin Nate, and our buddy Joel doing a weekend hike out in the Appalachian backcountry. Nothing hardcore, just something off the grid. Nate had been going through one of his rabbit holes online. He gets into weird stuff sometimes. And found this trail, not marked, not official, supposedly. It cut through some really untouched part of forest near a place called Ridgewater. A guy on an old hiking forum had posted about it. No GPS coordinates, just vague directions, and a warning that it wasn't for beginners, said it felt unspoiled and ancient, that nobody else was ever out there. Nate loved the idea. Joel and I were a little more skeptical, but we agreed. We'd been talking about doing a serious hike for a while. This was just enough of a challenge to be tempting. We set out Friday morning. It was about a 4-hour drive to get to the area, then another half-hour creeping along a dirt road until we hit this rusted livestock gate, chained open like someone had given up trying to close it decades ago. No signs, no trail ahead. Just a break in the trees and that sudden overwhelming hush that comes when the engine cuts off. We loaded our gear, backpacks, sleeping bags, freeze-dried food, and started walking. At first, it was kind of perfect. Trees close together, trail barely more than a muddy thread through the underbrush. It felt like we'd stepped into someplace forgotten, but not in a romantic, Instagram-worthy way. More like someone had locked the door behind us without telling us. About 2 hours in, I realized the woods were too quiet. No birds, no bugs, not even squirrels rustling in the brush. Just the soft thump of our boots and the occasional clink of Joel's water bottle against his pack. I mentioned it lightly, and Nate shrugged. Guess it's just that kind of place. Joel didn't say anything. We kept going. We reached the clearing around 4:30. Nate had spotted it on satellite view. Just a bald patch of ground tucked in the crook of a slope. When we stepped into it, the hairs on my arm stood up. The space felt wrong, not dangerous exactly, but like walking into a room where someone had just had a fight. The tension was baked into the air. 3 logs were arranged around a fire pit. Blackened and cracked, but long unused. There were no signs of fresh ash. Just moss-covered rocks and the faint lingering smell of sap and damp wood. We set up camp. Nate made jokes about forest cults. Joel kept checking the tree line like he expected something to walk out of it. I pretended to be fine, but I kept catching myself glancing over my shoulder. We ate canned chili and passed a bottle of whiskey around until it got dark. The fire we managed to build was pitiful, barely more than a flicker. Wood wouldn't catch right. It wasn't wet. It just didn't want to burn. That night, I didn't sleep much. My tent rustled now and then. And at one point I swore I heard someone or something walking around the edge of the clearing, not stomping, not sneaking, just pacing. I sat up holding my flashlight and knife and listened until morning. None of us said much over breakfast. We left our tents and gear behind and went looking for the ridge Nate had seen on the map. The view when we found it was stunning, nothing but trees. No smoke, no towers, no signs of life, just rolling green hills fading into blue. We stayed there a while, tossing snacks back and letting ourselves believe this trip was a good idea. Then we started back. That's when everything fell apart. We took the same trail, at least we thought we did. But after maybe an hour, nothing looked familiar. The moss was wrong. The trees were wrong. We passed a boulder none of us remembered. Then came across a dry creek bed we should have crossed earlier, but hadn't. I pulled out my compass. The trail was supposed to head south. The sun was now on our left. We were going east. Joel finally said what we were all thinking. "We're lost," Nate argued at first, insisted we'd be fine. But his voice got thinner the longer we walked. And then we heard it. Snap, a branch. Not a squirrel, not wind, something heavier. We stopped, I called out. Just a simple hello. Nothing. We turned around, tried a different route. After 20 minutes, somehow we were back at the clearing. That should have been a relief, but one of the logs had been moved. It was subtle, but obvious, just rotated slightly. I stared at it for a long second, and my mouth went dry. We didn't talk about it. We just started setting up for another night, pretending everything was fine. Joel tried to light the fire, same thing. Low flames, lots of smoke, no real heat. We ate in silence. I caught Joel gripping the handle of his hatchet until his knuckles turned white. That night, the woods went completely still. Not quiet, dead. At some point, around 2 o'clock in the morning, I woke up feeling like I couldn't breathe. Not a panic attack, not fear. Just this weird crushing stillness, like I'd been buried. I got out of the tent. The fire was out. Nate and Joel's tents were zipped tight. I clicked on my flashlight. It flickered once, then steadied. That's when I heard the footsteps again. Slow, careful, circling us, then a sound right behind me. A breath close enough that I felt the heat of it on my ear. I spun around, light raised, nothing, just trees. I backed into my tent and stayed there until morning, knife in hand, heart hammering like a drumline in my chest. At dawn, Nate and Joel were already packed. No small talk, no how'd you sleep. We just packed in silence. As I rolled up my tent, Joel let out this weird low grunt and held something up. A small figure, sticks twisted into a crude human shape. Red thread wrapped around the arms and neck. It hadn't been there the night before. We burned it, said nothing. The hike out was fast, no stops, no breaks, somehow. We never got turned around. It was like the woods wanted us gone. Half a mile from the trucks, we passed a tree, fresh carvings, 3 stick figures, 1 tall, 2 shorter, no initials, just crude upright human shapes. Nate didn't stop. Joel didn't even look. I stared for maybe a second too long. We never spoke about it after. Nate moved to Philadelphia, said he wanted to be closer to civilization. Joel quit hiking altogether, and me? I still get outside, but I stay on marked trails now. I stick close to towns, and I never go into woods that don't want me there. I've always been into hiking. Not the Instagram a waterfall kind of hiking, but the real stuff. Long trails, no cell signal, carrying everything on your back for days. I grew up near a small town called Jasper, not far from the Smoky Mountains. So the woods were pretty much my second home. I knew the trails, the moods of the mountains, even which ridgelines caught the worst of the wind on a bad day. It was like a language I never had to learn. It was just always there. Last fall things in my life got loud. Work was insane. My sister was going through some drama I got dragged into, and my brain felt like it had been buzzing non-stop for weeks. so I decided to check out for a bit. I planned a solo hike, just me, 3 days, and a remote loop trail outside of Arden, Tennessee. It's not one of those trails you find in guidebooks or top 10 scenic hikes lists. This one was barely marked, more like a whisper between trees than an actual path. It was mid-November, cold enough at night to bite, but still decent during the day. The forecast said dry skies, which meant I could pack light. No rain cover. No snow gear. I started at this old forestry gate down a dirt road nobody maintains anymore. No signs, no people, just forest. I'd mapped everything out, packed carefully, even left a note on my dashboard just in case. Not because I thought I'd need rescuing. I'd done harder hikes. I just like being prepared. The first day went exactly how I needed it to. Quiet. A little foggy. That perfect kind of damp air where everything smells like leaves and earth. The trail followed a ridge, and I got some gorgeous views of the valleys below. All rusty red and dull gold. I saw a few deer. Scared off some turkeys, watched a hawk circling way above me. Classic solo hike stuff. By evening, I found a nice flat spot near a spring and set up camp. No phone signal, but honestly, that was the goal. The second day was when things started feeling off. Not I saw a ghost off, just a shift. The kind you don't notice right away because it creeps in. The trees changed first, got older, denser. Their bark darker, almost burnt looking. The trail started fading in and out until it was less of a trail and more of a memory of one. I was using landmarks to navigate, big mossy rocks, a bent tree, stuff like that. And then I realized how quiet it had gotten. Like not just peaceful quiet. This was dead quiet. No birds, no rustling leaves, no breeze. Just this heavy smothering. Silence that felt wrong. I told myself it was just the valley acoustics. Maybe the wind couldn't get down that far. But deep down, I knew better. This wasn't just nature being calm. It felt vacant, like the forest was holding its breath then. I saw it. Fire ring. Not a campsite, just this ring of stones. 20 feet off the trail, down a steep little slope. If I hadn't glanced sideways at the right moment, I would have missed it. It was weirdly perfect, circular, blackened in the middle like it had seen fire, but not recently. The stones were old, pitted. With time, some covered in lichen, no logs for sitting, no trash, no signs of recent use. Just a forgotten little fire ring in a place nobody should have ever camped. Naturally, I went down to check it out, because why not walk straight into the sketchy thing in the creepy woods, right? I figured maybe it was old or historic or just weird. I sat on a fallen log nearby, had a snack, drank some water, tried to enjoy the stillness. But something about the air felt heavy, like the pressure had changed, like the atmosphere was pushing down just a little too much. That's when it shifted again. The silence didn't just feel quiet. It felt aware, like it was watching me, not in a paranoid hiker way, in a deliberate way. It was like the forest wanted me to feel how alone I was, like it was proving a point. I stood up fast, trying to shake it off. Told myself I was being dramatic, probably hungry, tired, whatever. I grabbed my pack, turned to leave, and then I heard it. My name not echoing from the trees, not whispered. It was inside my head like someone had leaned right into the center of my brain and just said it. Calm, direct, personal. I froze completely. Tried to think of explanations. Memory glitch, stress hallucination. But it wasn't distant or dreamy. It was here, real, present. And then bam, something shoved my pack hard. I fell forward, caught myself against a tree. Instinct kicked in. I whipped around, heart pounding, fists half raised like that was going to help. No one, nothing. I stood there for I don't know how long, just listening. Every part of me alert. I didn't hear branches cracking or animals running off. I didn't even feel wind, just stillness, and whatever pushed me, it felt like a hand. Solid, real. I bolted, didn't check bearings, didn't care. Just started scrambling uphill. The slope was brutal. but I didn't stop. My legs were burning. I slipped more. Then once, got mud on my hands, tore my jacket. I didn't care. I had to get up out. It felt like the ridge was pulling away from me, like I was running in place. But I kept moving, kept climbing, glancing behind me like something might finally show itself. Nothing ever did. I hit the top and kept going. I didn't rest. I didn't eat. I didn't even think. Just followed the ridgeline until the trail showed up again. Even then, the silence didn't lift. It followed me all the way back to the gravel road, all the way to the car. I didn't stop walking until the engine was on, and the doors were locked. I drove 30 miles before I felt like I could think straight. No music, no calls, just the road. I don't talk about it much. You tell someone you heard your name inside your own skull and got shoved by an invisible hand, and they look at you like you need sleep or therapy. Maybe I did. Still might. But I know what happened. It was real. Whatever was down there, it wasn't. Curious, it wasn't lost. It didn't want company. It knew me, knew my name, and for one long terrible moment, it decided to let me know it was there. I still hike, still love the mountains, just never alone, and never again anywhere near Argon. This happened when I was 24. I was stuck. Not just emotionally wrecked, really stuck. You know that feeling when you can't tell if you're sad or numb, like you're just going through the motions? That was me. I just crawled out of a long-drawn out breakup that felt more like surviving a storm than ending a relationship. So when Maddie called and said, "Let's disappear for a bit," I said yes before she finished the sentence. We didn't plan much. That was the whole point. Just throw a tent and a couple of sleeping bags into her old Subaru, fill the cooler with whatever didn't need cooking, and drive. Head south on the Blue Ridge Parkway, stop when we felt like it, sleep where it made sense. Maddie called it our escape tour. For me, it felt more like therapy. I could afford it. The first few days were easy, peaceful, even. No phone calls, no emails, just mountains and trees, and Maddie humming along to a playlist we built back in college. We'd stop for trailheads we found by accident, hike until our legs screamed, then set up camp somewhere we could watch the stars. There was something about the simplicity that worked. I didn't feel healed or anything, but I wasn't drowning either. On day 4, we found a side road. Gravel, narrow, barely maintained. The kind of road you wouldn't even notice unless you were specifically looking for a detour. Maddie saw it first. "Let's try this one," she said. There was no sign, no marker, just a faint tire track disappearing into the trees. I didn't hesitate. We lost signal within 10 minutes. No GPS, no bars, nothing but trees on either side and the crunch of gravel under the tires. We figured it had to loop back to the highway eventually. We'd done this kind of thing before. Dumb, spontaneous detours that led to hidden waterfalls or tiny towns with great coffee. But this time felt different. After an hour, the road narrowed to a point where branches were tapping the roof. The sun started dropping behind the trees, and I realized we hadn't seen another car, house, or even mailbox in the last 30 meters. Just forest, thicker than it had any right to be. Then Maddie pointed that it was a sign nailed to a birch tree, handmade. Faded red paint, chipping and uneven. It said in Camp Elizabeth Hollow, 1 mile. I laughed. "That sounds like where people go missing," Maddie smirked. "Exactly why we have to check it out," so we turned in. I wish we hadn't. The road led to a clearing, a rough circle cut into the trees. There was an old fire pit choked with ash and the crumbled remains of 2 picnic tables. No cabins, no welcome sign, just overgrowth and silence. No birds, no bugs, not even wind. I stepped out of the car and felt it in my chest. That tight pressing feeling like I was being watched, or like I'd walked into a room I wasn't supposed to be in. Maddie got out slowly. She didn't say anything for a minute, just looked around. "Do you hear anything?" she asked finally. "No," I said, "nothing at all." We debated leaving, but daylight was fading fast, and the thought of backtracking on that gravel road in the dark wasn't exactly appealing. So we stayed. We set up the tent quickly, throwing it together like it would somehow protect us. Maddie made a weak joke about horror movies, and I gave a half laugh just to pretend everything was fine. Dinner was soup and crackers. We sat on a log by the fire, saying less and less as the dark crept in. The fire gave off this weird flickering glow that made everything around us look too sharp. Around 1000 p.m., it started. Twig snapping, slow, deliberate, not rustling, not wind steps. Maddie stiffened. "Did you hear that?" I nodded, yeah. We both froze listening. Another snap closer. I stood up and threw more logs on the fire, trying to make it flare. I didn't say anything. Neither did she. Then Maddie said, quiet and sharp, "We're sleeping in the car." We grabbed our stuff and got in, locking the doors. Pushed the seats back, bundled under jackets, trying to shake the feeling off. "We're being paranoid," she muttered. Could have been an animal. But neither of us slept. We sat in silence, flinching at every small noise. Then maybe around 1 a.m. I heard it. Pause. Dap. Tap. So soft. I thought I was imagining it. Then I realized it was coming from the backseat window right behind Maddie's head. I turned slowly. There was a handprint, faint, fogged, pressed against the inside of the glass. I couldn't breathe. I reached over, grabbed her arm, and whispered, "Don't look, just move." She turned anyway. Her face went pale. She didn't scream, just nodded. We started the car and drove. No talking, just gravel flying and headlights slicing through the woods. Every shadow looked wrong. Every tree looked like it might move. We drove for hours. No signs, no landmarks, just forest. Right after sunrise, we found a road paved. I almost cried. It led to a gas station. Old, faded. One of those places that looks abandoned until you realize the neon open sign is still glowing in the window. We went in, shaking. The guy behind the counter didn't even blink. "You girls coming from Ellison Hollow?" he asked. I froze. "You know it?" He nodded. Used to be a camp closed after some folks went missing. Rangers tried to shut it down. Guess they missed a few roads. Maddie asked what happened to them. The man looked up. His eyes were wrong, too calm. Some places don't like being remembered. We didn't say anything else. Just left. We didn't stop. Again until we found a motel with working locks and thick walls. I didn't sleep, but I didn't care. It felt like something was behind us the whole way, and we finally outran it. Back home, I tried to find it. Camp Ellison Hollow. I searched maps, forums, old records, nothing. It doesn't exist. But a week later, I was cleaning out the backseat of Maddie's car, wiping down the windows, and I saw it again. That same handprint inside the glass. I wiped it off. The next morning, it came back. This happened last October, and I haven't been able to forget it. Not completely. Kasha and I had both hit a wall. She's a trauma nurse. Works rotating night shifts in one of those ERs where every hour feels like an emergency. I work from home. Freelance design stuff, logos, pitch decks, UX mockups, deadlines, revisions. More caffeine than sleep. Our schedules rarely lined up, and when they did, we were usually too burned out to enjoy it. It was like we were always missing each other in passing. Like roommates more than a couple, so when she said, "Let's disappear," for a few days, I didn't need to hear the rest. I just said, "Yeah, let's do it." She found this hike and campsite deep in Cherokee National Forest, not an official campground, just a spot she heard about from a patient's cousin or something. No cell service, no map trailhead, just a GPS pin dropped near an old mining road. One of those places you could only get to if you knew it existed, or if you were actively trying to vanish for a bit. We packed light, too light, one oversized rental tent with questionable poles, a camp stove we'd never used before, a mismatched Mess of vegetables and a kitchen knife so dull it would have struggled with butter. I think we wanted to feel like we could still do things the hard way, like life hadn't made us too soft or too dependent on apps and supermarkets. We drove 3 hours from Knoxville, passed through a town I don't even remember the name of, just gas stations and boarded up diners. Eventually, we pulled off onto a gravel shoulder next to a faded gate covered in vines. That was our parking lot. The trail itself wasn't really a trail. It was a scar in the forest, just wide enough for us to walk single file. We kept climbing, switchbacks, roots, loose rock. The air was dense, and there was this stillness in them. Trees that didn't sit right. I kept glancing behind us like we'd missed a sound. But there was nothing, just that quiet, crushing kind of silence that makes you feel like you're being listened to. It took about 2 hours to reach the ridge. The spot was pretty in an untouched kind of way. No fire ring, no signage. Just a mostly flat patch of ground next to a slope that dropped into a wooded hollow. Tasha stood at the edge looking down at the trees. She said, "It's perfect," and dropped her pack. We set up camp. The tent barely fit the space. The ground was uneven. We spent more time trying to stabilize it with rocks than anything else. Then we tried to cook. The camp stove sputtered to life, and we managed to soften up some zucchini and squash in a pan. It tasted like watery nothing, but we pretended it was amazing. We didn't talk much that night, just sat by the fire, staring into the flames like we were trying to hypnotize ourselves into feeling relaxed. But the silence wasn't peaceful. It was off. There were no bugs, no rustling leaves, not even distant owls. Just a pop of damp wood and the occasional shift of fabric as we moved. I remember saying, "It's too quiet." Tasha just shrugged. "That's kind of the point, isn't it?" We went to bed early. She fell asleep right away. I didn't. I'd lay there staring at the ceiling of the tent, waiting for some sound, any sound. And when it finally came, I wasn't ready for it. Leaves crunching, not fast, one slow step after another. The kind of movement that didn't belong to an animal. It had rhythm, like someone pacing. I didn't move. I just listened, heart hammering in my chest. Tasha snored softly next to me, completely out. I kept telling myself it was nothing. A raccoon, maybe a deer. I didn't even believe it. But I needed to, eventually. I forced myself to close my eyes and drifted off. In the morning, I stepped out of the tent and immediately noticed something. The ground about 30 feet away was different. Not dug up, but marked, a long narrow drag line in the dirt, like something had been pulled. Not a tire, not animal tracks, just one smooth groove leading away into the trees. I pointed it out to Tasha. She looked at it, then looked at me. "You probably dragged your boot or something," she said. I hadn't. I knew I hadn't, but I didn't push it. We spent the afternoon exploring the ridge, looking for other trails, or maybe a better view. The forest up there felt older than the rest, denser, darker, like it had been left untouched for decades. Eventually, we found this rock formation that stopped us both in our tracks. A wide outcrop shaped like a mouth, not a natural arch, something crumbled and collapsed like an old shelter or shrine. It felt wrong. I stepped closer, half curious, and saw something inside the hollow. White, arranged, a spiral about a foot across, made from small bones, birds, rodents, something with long vertebrae, clean, bleached, perfectly placed. Like whoever made it had taken their time. It wasn't random, it was deliberate. Tasha stepped back and said, "Nope, we're done." We didn't talk the whole way back to camp. That night, I couldn't sleep at all. I kept the flashlight in my hand just in case. Around 2 a.m., I heard it again. Footsteps, slow, measured. They weren't close, but they were circling us, wider. Loops this time. I clicked the flashlight. Nothing. I opened it, checked the batteries. Fresh, still nothing. And then I heard whispering, not in the trees. Not from outside, from underneath. It was like the dirt was breathing words. Faint garbled syllables like someone whispering through a wall of soil. I froze. Then I felt the tent shift. Not a breeze, not the wind. Slow movement rising from below. The ground under Tasha's legs bulged slightly. Like something underneath was pushing upward. Her eyes flew open. She grabbed my hand. I grabbed the knife. Useless. But it felt better than nothing. Neither of us said a word. We just ran out of the tent into the trees barefoot. Half-dressed, crashing through brush. The cold barely registered. We ran until we hit the orange tape Tasha had tied to a tree near the trailhead. Then we stopped, panting, shaking, listening. Nothing followed us. The forest was still. 2 at sunrise we went back, packed in silence. The tent was intact, our stuff was fine. But the earth beneath the tent, flat again, smooth, no sign of movement. No trace of what had happened, except one thing. Carved into the trunk of a birch tree nearby, fresh deep, was a spiral, same shape as the one made of bones. It hadn't been there before. We hiked out. We didn't speak the entire way. Halfway through the drive back to Knoxville, Tasha broke the silence. She said, "We're never telling anyone about this." I nodded, "Okay," and we didn't. My name's Darren. I'm 32. Work maintenance at a school in Ellery, North Carolina. Nothing fancy. Fixing leaky sinks, resetting circuit breakers. But I spend my weekends out in the woods, always have. I grew up around the Appalachian trails, and I know the terrain like second nature. This happened last October. I was hiking solo up an old ridge trail behind Baldwin Peak. It's not on most maps. Just a side path my dad showed me years ago. I had my dog Milo with me, a shepherd lab mixed with bad hips and zero awareness of his own size. Usually he lumbers along behind me, but that day he kept pulling ahead like he had somewhere to be. About an hour in I noticed the quiet. At first, I thought it was just a break in the usual bird song, but then I realized it was more than that. No wind, no rustling leaves, nothing. Even our footsteps sounded dull, like the forest was swallowing the noise. Then I felt it. This weird warmth slid through me. It wasn't like getting overheated. It was more like something just switched off the aches in my legs and unclenched every muscle in my back. I felt good, too good, like I'd had a drink I didn't remember taking. And then Milo stopped. He froze up mid-step, ears perked, staring at a thicket just off trail. Then he barked once, short, sharp, and lunged. I barely caught his leash, nearly fell flat trying to hold him back. That's when I heard something move in the brush. It didn't sound like a rabbit or a deer. It was heavy, slow, like something huge trying to move quietly and not quite pulling it off. Then came this sound, wet, like hooves hitting soft ground. Thud. School slup. Thud. It felt like whatever it was should have been right in front of me, but there was nothing there. The branches moved. The ground shifted, but it was empty. I could see where it should have been, but it wasn't. Then I noticed the moss right in front of us. The ground sank like something stepped down hard. You could see the shape. 2 feet, way too big to be human. Not prints exactly, just pressure. Pine needles bent, leaves flattened. But nothing was making the shadows you'd expect. And then it screamed. Not a roar, not an animal call. It was lower than a bear, but sharper, metallic, like steel tearing through rebar. It vibrated my chest. Milo hit the ground, belly flat. My ears rang for a solid minute after it stopped. Everything went still again. I wanted to run. Every part of me told me to move. But I didn't. That warmth still there. Like someone had slipped something into my blood just enough to keep me standing there like an idiot. And worse, I felt this stupid need to see it. Like if I could just lay eyes on it, I'd understand something important. But I didn't. Not that day. Over the next 2 weeks. Every time I hit the trails, same thing. It followed me, always off to the side. 30 feet out. Sometimes behind, sometimes ahead. No footsteps when I stopped. No sounds when I looked, just pacing me like it was waiting. Eventually, I said out loud, half to myself, "You can't get me if I stay on the trail." And it stopped that day. The sound just vanished. No more pacing until the last time. It was late October. I was coming down from Grurz's Point with Milo dragging behind me. We stopped at a clearing where the trail opens up. Nothing unusual. I was catching my breath. Milo flopped in the dirt behind me. Then it crossed the ridge, 80 feet ahead. something shimmered between two trees. I don't know how else to describe it. It was shaped like a person, but the edges blurred like light through heat. I couldn't see details, but I knew it was big, broad, moving on two legs. Something about the way it walked made the hair stand up on my arms, and it turned its head. I didn't see a face, just the motion, like it knew I saw it. Then it was gone fast. Milo didn't bark, he just stared ears back, not moving. And I didn't chase it, didn't move at all for a long time. Since then, I've been back out there, but I stick to the main trails now. I tell people where I'm going. I carry a compass, a whistle, a flashlight. Stuff I used to think was overkill. I still bring Milo, but he never pulls ahead anymore.